Okay, we are going to be doing half turns and quarter turns, and you should have a pencil and a piece of padded paper. This is from the Carnegie book. So down here, it tells us to redraw each figure as described so that it is turned 180 degrees. Okay, so if I have, I'm going to do it all the way up here in the top. That's horrible. But if I was to turn it 180 degrees, that would be this way. So that means, sorry, that it would be that direction. So I need to draw this. Now, I don't need to be precise on this part. We're just, why is this not focusing very well? There we go. Okay, so then if I have this one, means that I turn it 90, then I turn it 180. Look at that. It's basically upside down. So all of what we're doing right now, oops, I did the wrong part up top. What we're doing is flipping, oh, I didn't read the directions. It says 90 degrees counterclockwise. Okay, a clock goes this direction. So counterclockwise is going to go the other direction. So I'm going to go this direction. So that means that this part is here. Okay, and again, it doesn't have to be perfect.
Ollie Luna, please come to the register office. Ollie Luna, please come to the register office.
Okay, so this is my before. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect because I'm just going to go clockwise this time. So it's this direction. So I'm going to go 90 degrees. So it'd be this direction. So now I'm going to draw. It's not going to be perfect, I know. Okay, yeah, that was horrible. Yeah, that was horrible drawing, but that's okay. So now, oops, we're going to go over to this page right here. And on this paper right here, it says, in the activity, you'll be investigating rotating pre-images. Remember, pre-image is where we're starting at, to understand the rotation effects of coordinates of the image. So we're going to rotate this 180 degrees about the origin. So the first thing that I'm going to tell you about doing rotations is the first thing, always draw this little T that's right here. It's where the X and Y axes intersect. So then you want to draw, this is E, D, F, G. Now you can go in any order you want. I'm just doing about. And up here is C. And do I want to connect? That would be smart. Okay. There we go. So I'm going to go 180 degrees. Well, if I go one, if I move this right here, my x-axis up to my y-axis, I've now gone 90 degrees counterclockwise. But I'm not asking for 90 degrees. I want 180 degrees. So that means I need to go one more turn. So I'm going to go one more turn right here. Okay? And so it's going to be in this position right here. Now, the easiest thing to do would be to write down here what the image is, but I'm going to come to A. And if I look at A through this, I don't know if you can see it through, and excuse me. Okay, so this is at -2, -1. So if I come here, I'm going to go to -2, -1, and I'm going to put A prime. So A prime was -2, -1. I wrote it down here. Oops. wrote it right there. Okay. So then I'm going to do letter B. So letter B is at -2, and we'll go down 1, 2, 3. So -2, -3. So I'm going to go to -2, -3, and write B prime. And then I'm going to come down here, B prime, -2, -3. Then I'm going to go to C. And C is right here at -4, and that's down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So -4, -5. So -4 and down to -5, I'm going to put C prime. So -4, -5. Okay. So then I'm going to go to D. D is right here. And that's at -2, and it's down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So -2, -5. So that's D prime. So I'm going to write down here at the bottom, D prime is -2, -5. Then I'm going to come to E. Again, it's still at oops, I moved my paper. I'm going to make sure it stays where it is. There we go. It's at -2, but down we go down one more. So -2, -6. So that's E prime. So I'm going to come here, E prime, -2, -6. Then F is right here. So that went over to -5, and it's right across from E. So this is -5, -6. So -5, oops, -6. And that's F prime. -5, -6. Then I want G. G prime, I should say. It's right here. Still on the -5, but we went up one. So -5, -5. So G prime is -5, -5. Oh, my fingers. Okay. Okay. Got to line it back up. My piece of paper is in the way. So now I want to do H. I gotta make sure that I'm lined up. There we go. H is right here. So that was over to -4, and it's down 1, 2. So -4, -2. So -4, -2, and that's H prime. Oops, that's a horrible H. So H prime is -4, -2. And then we're going to come up and do J. And J is right here, even though for some reason it's written over there. So J is here. Oops, sorry about that. So we go over to -5 and we go down 1, 2. So -5, -2. So -5, -2. This is going to be J prime. So -5, -2 is J prime. And then last but certainly not least, we have K here. So K prime is going to be -5, -1. So -5, -1 is going to be K prime. So K prime is -5, -1. So now we can draw it. Okay. A, B, C, D, E prime, F prime, G prime, H prime, J prime, K prime. And there we have it. We have the rotation of 180 degrees. Okay, so now that we did that part, let's look down here at the bottom part. Let's look at this. And as we look at this, I want you to notice something about the x and y values. Look at the x and y values. What do you notice? So when we do 180 degrees, now CC is going to stand for counterclockwise, and 180 degrees clockwise, they're actually the same thing. So if I came 180 degrees counterclockwise, that's 90, this is 180, that's going to be the same as going 90, then 180, okay? So when you do two turns, when you do two 90-degree turns, okay, you're either going to have 180 degrees counterclockwise or 180 degrees clockwise. Okay, so those are going to mean the exact same thing. Two turns of 90 degrees are going to get you 180 degrees. So most of the time, people will just say 180 degrees. So when we start off, remember this notation, x and y. Well, let's look at the x and y. Let's look at the x's. Are they the same? No, they're opposite x's. Are they the same? Nope, they're opposite. Opposite, 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 opposite. So every single time, the x value is the opposite. Then let's look at the y. Look at that. Each one of those are opposites of each other. So anytime you have a 180-degree turn, you are going to have the opposite every single solitary time. Okay? So now let's do this next one. Okay? So we're going to talk about if this direction, oops, sorry, you can't see it. This direction is clockwise, and this direction is counterclockwise. Okay? Now, what we're going to do, we're going to look at this first. It's going to be asking us to do some rotation, so we're going to put our patty paper here. And just like I said on the last one, you want to put a little T right there. Then, this right here is A. This right here is B. Here is C. Right here is D. And I'm going to connect my lines. Okay, so this right here, the directions down on letter B says to do 90 degrees counterclockwise about the origin. So I'm going to come here and I go 90 degrees. Okay, so I went one turn 90 degrees that direction. That's all I did. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up this right here. And I'm going to say, okay, A is right here. So I came over, this is -6, -1. So at -6, -1, I'm going to put A prime. Then B, that's at -4 and it's up 1, 2, -4, 2. And I'm going to put B prime. C is going to be at 0, 1, 2, 3. So C prime is here. And then last but not least is -2, 0 for D prime. -2, 0 for D prime. And then hopefully you're actually using a ruler. And voila, we have that. Okay? So now what I want to do is on the next page, it actually wants us to write down the coordinates. So if I'm looking at A on this, I have the point -1, 6. B. Okay, so B is going to be 2, 4. C is going to be 3, 0. D is going to be 0, 2. Now we need to do our primes. So A prime. So if I look at A prime, that's going to be at -6, -1. B prime is going to be at -4, 2. C prime is going to be at 0, 3. And D prime is going to be at -2, 0. Okay? So let's compare these. Let's look at my x. So my x is -1, 2, 3, and 0 for these. If I look over here at this, what do you notice about the numbers -1, 2, 3, and 0? Do you notice the x value has now become the y value? So we started off with it this way, but now the x is over here. To go for a 90 degrees counterclockwise, the x moved to the y spot. Now let's look at the y values. So I have 6 and I have -6. 4 and -4. 0 and 0. 2 and -2. So yes, my y is now in my x position, but we've taken the opposite of that. So let's pretend this is a totally different one. Let's say E is the point 3, 7. And I'm going to do a 90-degree counterclockwise. That means I'm going to put my X in the Y position. I'm going to put the Y in the X position, but I'm going to take the opposite of it. Let's say I have F, and that's the point -6, -2. So I'm going to do the same thing. The X moves over here, so that stays right there. The Y goes to the X position, but it takes the opposite. So the opposite of -2 is +2. Okay. Now, you can use steps to help you rotate geometric objects on the coordinate plane. Let's rotate a point 90 degrees about the origin. Okay, so that's what's happening here. It went about the origin. Okay, it went right here. Okay, what do we notice about the points? I put the X position into the Y position. I put the Y into the X position and took the opposite of it. Okay. So, we just talked about this a second ago. Okay. We talked about 180 degrees. We talked about it in the fact that it's going to be -x, -y. Then we talked about counterclockwise, and we said that the y is going to go here and it's going to be its opposite, and then the x. Now we need to figure out what it's going to be for 90 degrees clockwise. Okay? We need to do 90 degrees clockwise. What do you think it's going to be? So what we're going to do is we're going to come over here. We're going to stop on that for a second, and we're going to come over here. And we've got this down here, and we can actually fill it out for this one and this one without doing any work. We need to figure out what it's going to do with the clockwise position. So let's figure out for the clockwise position. Well, first, I need to plot these points. Okay, so 3, 4. So I go over 3, I go up 4, and I put A. And then I go 6, 1, and I put B. And oops, 4, 9, that A I should have put on the other side, but that's okay. C. So me. That was horrible, but that's okay. So you can see it. There we have it. Now, I need to do this. Remember, first step is you always draw this. Okay, different pencil. You always draw that first. And then my A is here. My B is here. My C is here. Okay, so now I connect the dots. We should be using rulers. So now we want to go 90 degrees clockwise. So we're going to go, as a clock, we're going to go this direction. Okay, we're going to go that direction. So now I look at this and I say A prime is going to be at 4, -3. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to write A prime 4, -3. Okay? I'm going to write it here. 4, -3. And that's A prime. Okay? My B is down here at 1, -6. So 1, -6, I'm going to write B prime. And I'm going to come down here and I'm going to put B prime, and that's 1, -6. Okay? And I'm going to come back up here, and C prime is going to be at 9, -4. So 9, -4, and that's C prime. And C prime down here was 9, -4. So now, let's compare the x values. Or let's look at the x values right here. If I look at the x values, this is definitely not the same x value. Okay? So that means that I'm going to look over on the y's. Look at that. They're almost the exact same, but they are their opposite. So whatever our original x was, it needs to now be the y, but the opposite. Okay? Now let's look at right here the y values. 4, 1, 9. 4, 1, 9. They're exactly the same, but now they're in the x position. Okay? So I'm going to go now back to this sheet right here, and I'm going to say that if I was doing this, the y is here and -x. Okay? So I'm going to do these in just a second. I want to do a couple examples of this one. So 90 degrees clockwise. So if I started off with the point -2, 4. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch these. They're going to be switched around, but this one right here, when it comes to the y position, it's going to be the opposite. So that's going to be a 2, and this will go here, and it'll be just 4. So it'll be the 0.42. Okay, if I add 6, negative 8, okay, the x value, goes to where the y is, and you take the opposite of it. The y value goes to where the x is, and you leave it the same. Okay, so I was going to do a rotation about 90 degrees counterclockwise. This would be negative, and then this. So no matter what, we switch around the x and the y. So this is now 4, this is now 3, but there's now a negative in front of that. I switch these two numbers around. This is a 1, this is a 6, but this is negative. I switch these two around, but this first one is negative. Then if I go rotation 180 degrees, automatically they're still in the same positions, they're just their opposite. So negative 3, negative 4, negative 6, negative 1, negative 4, negative 9. So you may or may not remember that the first quadrant is always positive, positive. Second quadrant is always negative, positive. Third quadrant is always negative, negative. And fourth quadrant is always positive, negative. So if you forget where the negatives and positives should go, think about it. If I was to move this 90 degrees counterclockwise, that means over here, that means all of the x values have to be negative. So if I look at this right here, all of my x values are negative and all my y values are positive. If I went 180 degrees, that means everything's negative. Is everything negative? Yes. If I went 90 degrees clockwise, then that means my x values are positive, my y values are negative, and that's what I have right there. Okay. So now we're going to look at this. Okay. This says we're not going to try and graph it. Okay. So it says 90 degrees counterclockwise. Okay. So that means it goes this direction. That means we start with this. Okay. So remember, 90 degrees counterclockwise is going to get us this, negative yx. So that means I'm going to switch around my x and y and make what's now in the x value the opposite. So d prime. So I switch around the numbers. So 10 is going to come here, negative 7 is going to here, but what's now in the y position or in the x position has to be its opposite. E prime. I switch around the numbers, and now what's in the x position needs its opposite. F prime. I switch around these numbers. So negative 8, negative 1. But now what's in this position needs to be the opposite. So the opposite of negative 8 is positive 8. Or you can just erase it altogether. I can barely see my 8 now. Okay? 8, negative 1. So now I want to do it down here. We're going to do it clockwise. So we're going to do the same thing. D is negative 7, 10. E is negative 5, 5. And F is negative 1, negative 8. So 90 degrees clockwise is going to say we have x and y. We switch them around here like so, but this time we're going to be opposite there. And some of you are asking, well, how do you know that off the top of your head? Well, I just look at this. If I go this direction, the x position is positive, the y position is the opposite. If I was going counterclockwise, I switch positions, but what's in the x position is the opposite, and what's in the y position is the Same. So that's what I'm doing here. So D, we'll call it double prime. So we're switching positions again, but this time what's in the Y position is its opposite. So that would be positive. Sorry, it's so late. There we go. Okay, E prime. So again, I switch the positioning. Oops, that's 5, negative 5. Now, what's in this position is its opposite again. Why is it so late? That would be positive, so it's 5, 5. Oh, and these would be double prime because we already did that up above. So I switch position, so negative 8, negative 1, and what's in the Y position takes its opposite. Okay, now 180 degrees. So if I was doing 180 degrees, remember D is negative 7, 10. E is negative 5, 5. F is negative 1, negative 8. Okay? Oops, sorry. If I have 180 degrees rotation, all you do is take the opposite of each of the X and Y values. So D triple prime, the opposite of negative 7 would be 7. The opposite of 10 would be negative 10. E triple prime, the opposite of negative 5 would be 5. The opposite of 5 would be negative 5. F, oops, that's triple prime. The opposite of negative 1 is positive 1. The opposite of negative 8 is 8. Okay. Awesome. So, we are in the book. Okay. Here we have rotations, 8-3. We're on page 455. We're in the McGraw-Hill book. It says a rotation is a transformation in which the figure is rotated or turned about a fixed point. The center of rotation is fixed point A. Rotation does not change in size or shape, so the pre-image and the image are congruent. So that means that they are a rigid motion. Okay, remember, this is rigid motion. Okay? Rotations can be described in degrees and direction. The phrases 90 degrees clockwise and 270 degrees counterclockwise are two examples of possible descriptions of a rotation. Okay, so if I look here, okay, if I look at this is point A. It is rotating and it's going 90 degrees in a clockwise position. Okay. Here they're doing 180 degrees rotation, makes a straight line. See this right here, from this line to this line, it's 90 degrees. Okay. Then over here, okay, this is 270 degrees. So this right here was 90 degrees. This right here was 180. So this is another 90 degrees and it got you to 270 degrees. Okay. We are not going to be doing this work about different points. We're just going to be doing it around the origin. So we're actually going to skip over to page 458. Okay, the coordinates of an image rotated clockwise about an origin can be determined using coordinate notation, which we've been doing. When a figure is rotated about the origin, the center of rotation is 0, 0. Each point of the original figure and its image are the same distance from the origin. Okay, so if I look at this, okay, this point to this point, we made a 90 degrees. It went 90 degrees clockwise. Okay, again, clockwise is this way, just like a clock goes. So what we're doing is we're switching these, and that what's now in the Y position becomes a negative. It's not a negative, I apologize. Think of this as the opposite. Okay, not just negative, but think of it as its opposite. Because if I look at this point right here, oh, I don't want that one. Maybe we can do this one. So this is the point -3, 1. If I come over here, it's now 1, 1, 3. So that took its opposite. The opposite of that -3 was +3. Okay, so 180 degrees, we're going to go 180 degrees, which is a straight line. We take the opposites. And then down here, 270 degrees clockwise is going to be down here. And right here we do -yx. Now, 270 degrees clockwise is the exact same thing as 90 degrees counter clockwise. And most books are going to talk about counterclockwise instead of using 270 degrees clockwise. So what we're going to do right here, oops. So we have the point -4, 4, -1, 2, -3, 1. Okay, and it's going to be rotated 90 degrees clockwise. And if I look over here at 90 degrees clockwise, that means I'm going to switch my X and Y. So I'm going to switch my X and Y. We switch the X and Y. And what is now in the Y position is its opposite. Okay? So the X coordinate of the image is the I don't even want to look at these words. So I'm going to switch these two around. So 4 is now going to be here. Now, remember, we're doing the opposite of what the Y would now be. So that would be -4, but we need the opposite. So that's going to be +4. Right here, we switch these two. So this is now 2. This would be -1 if we were just switching it. But I don't want to just switch it. I want to take its opposite. So it's +1. Okay, same thing here. I'm going to switch these two numbers. This is going to be 1. This would be -3, but I want its opposite. So that's +3. Okay, so down here it asks for about our 180 degrees. So I'm going to do XY. 180 degrees, I just take the opposite. Okay, so if I'm looking at this M prime, I'm just taking the opposite. So -2, -5. N prime, I'm just taking the opposite. -6, -4. P prime, -6, -1. And Q prime, -2, -1. Oops, sorry about that. Okay. Okay, so here we have these. So if I look at the image, or the pre-image, I want to write down its spot. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So -6, -2. Then B is -5, 1. And C is -2, -3. And then I'm going to write down this. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6, 2. B is 5, -1. C prime is 2, 3. So the coordinates, they have not switched. All they did was take on the opposite of that. And so it's opposite of it, that means you did 180-degree rotation. Okay, so right here, we're going to do the same thing. So I'm going to look at A is at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2. Oops, A, not A prime. I apologize. B is at 2, 1. C is at 3, negative 2. Okay. A prime is at negative 2. No, it is not at negative 2. It is at 2, negative 5. B prime is at 1, negative 2. C prime is at negative 2, negative 3. So we start with xy, and what happened? The 5 is now over here, the 2 is here. So then they switched, so that means that they switched, but which one took on the opposite? The y values took on, the new y value took on its opposite. So that means that it went from here to here. That is going to be a 90-degree clockwise rotation.